Welcome to Start with Hello, conversations about disability. This episode is all about curriculum, but specifically, we're going to talk about the best way to think through your calendar. And I imagine if you've looked at our website, maybe you're brand new, I could see how you might be a little overwhelmed with where to start, because there's times where I feel overwhelmed looking at it. I mean, we've got a lot of curriculum, got a lot of resources. We have what we call traditional curriculum. We have video driven and some that are probably a little bit in between. And I can imagine for a lot of people, it could probably be tough figuring out, okay, I know I need curriculum and I could just go buy something. What about beyond that? Or better yet, I don't even know where to begin. And if is there an order? Do I take these things in? We brought in the expert again, Ryan, who probably, I don't know if y'all know this, but I'd say 99% of the curriculum he's written. And I wanted to take a quick step back and explain, for those of you that might not know, I wanted to explain some of the differences in the curriculum itself, because you'll hear us talk about video driven curriculum. And I think that makes a lot of sense to a lot of people, but we also reference something called traditional curriculum. And I just want to make sure people know what those two terms refer to. So, Ryan, can you explain the differences in video driven and traditional, what those options are to people who might be new to the curriculum?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, video driven's pretty self-explanatory. And the biggest difference between video driven and traditional is strictly in the delivery method of the main lesson. So video driven, obviously, you're going to get your lesson taught to on video by one of us. The lesson's been recorded for you already. The lesson's going to be somewhere in the probably 10-minute range, a little bit less, a little bit more based on what the lesson is. So that's the main portion of your lesson. In the traditional curriculum, the lessons are not taught on video. The delivery method for the lessons is through PowerPoint. So all of the Bible verses, the questions, the activities, every element of your Bible lesson will be right there on the slides for you. The leader or the facilitator just needs to click through those slides and facilitate the lesson from there. And that's really the biggest difference. Now, if you have video driven and not traditional, you still get a PowerPoint, but it's not as lengthy and it doesn't go into as much as the traditional does, because the main portion of your lesson is taught for you on video. So those probably the biggest difference. And people maybe prefer one style or the other for different reasons. Another difference between the two is if you're the type of leader that likes to customize your lesson, change things to meet the needs of your group more, uh, probably want to look at the traditional more than the video driven, because obviously there's not much you can do to change the video. But with a PowerPoint, you have 100% ability to change anything you want with that. Both styles come with, like I said, come with PowerPoints. Both styles come with Bible memory verses that are taught in sign language on a separate video. Both styles come with a leader's guide, coloring pages, word searches, other activities, all the extras that we include with our curriculum. So I guess that's a real quick look at some of the differences between video driven and traditional.
So if I'm just getting started, how do I know what's best for my class?
Well, I think every church is different. And I think churches have volunteers or leaders that sometimes are intimidated by the idea of teaching. For those churches, you might lean more towards the video driven because that element of teaching is done for you on video. Other churches may have leaders that enjoy being up front in front of their group, driving a conversation, driving a lesson. They may lean more towards the traditional because they have the ability to kind of drive that lesson from the stage. Um, I think uh, churches do tend to prefer one over the other. My best advice for churches is to try both. We have free samples on our website of both styles, and I always encourage people uh, download both and try both out.
Okay, so what's the what would you say is the best way for churches or organizations to go about planning all of this curriculum? So let's say that I'm a church, you're doing a consultation, and I kind of don't know exactly where to start. So do I just go look at a series and say, hey, I like this, I'm just going to buy it and kind of go with it, and then just buy it as I need? Or does it make sense for me to say, okay, let me go ahead and get something to cover the whole year? Like, I guess, what is your best recommendation on where to begin with that?
I think again, it depends on the church, the style of the leader, maybe even the budget process for the church. If a church says, "Hey, you've got X amount of dollars to spend in each quarter," or maybe spending is tight and they're not able to buy a full year at a time, sometimes that drives that decision more than anything. But if not, kind of based on budget restrictions, I would say it's more dependent on the leader. Some leaders are planners. They like to lay out things over an entire year. And I do find that when leaders do plan ahead for an entire year, it does make it easier for them to recruit volunteers to help, because a volunteer um, can get pretty anxious if they don't know what they're doing. But if the leader says, "Hey, coming up in October, we're going to be teaching a series about, X, Y, or Z." And a volunteer be like, "Oh, yeah, I'm comfortable with that subject." It might be easier to even recruit volunteers for those that like to plan out ahead for like an entire year at a time. And for those people that do like to plan out that far ahead, we do have a lot of great 1 year long bundles, we like to call them, in our store. And when you buy a year at a time, you do save a significant amount of money versus kind of piecemealing it. Now I know there are other leaders out there that like to kind of change as their group changes, because I think that's something that in disability ministry we do see quite a bit, is the makeup of your group may change significantly over the course of a year, based on who's coming, who's not coming, different issues that may be happening in your community. And some leaders like the ability to be able to pivot and change over time, and they don't necessarily want to be locked into a full year, and that's okay too. And so for those leaders, they may like to buy, 2-3 months at a time and just kind of reevaluate after that. The beauty of our curriculum is that you can do both. If you want to plan out a full year, you can do it on your own by piecemealing it. You can buy one of our year-long bundles, or you can buy things kind of as you go and as your group changes. This is one question that I do get fairly often in consultations: is where should I start? And people recommend that I pick, a couple of different series for them. And obviously I go through, quite a few different questions with the leaders to find out kind of the makeup of their group and, what are some of the issues that maybe they're dealing with at any given time. But if I ever, am asked that question, where I usually lean towards is starting with the gospel message. And we have so many different series that teach the gospel message in unique and different ways. We have the gospel in colors, we have the gospel in 3 words, we have the gospel in 3 flavors. So we are passionate about sharing the good news of Jesus in new and different and creative ways. So when a church asks me, I'm not sure where to begin, I always say, hey, there's no better place than beginning with presenting the gospel message to your group. And so I just kind of walk through a couple of those different options and say, hey, if you're not sure where to start, pick one of those series and you kind of build from there.
Now, I like that you mentioned the how the ministry makeup itself changes. this past weekend, I was looking at our class and I took a step back and I took a photo of our friend Mark, who was leading the curriculum. And it was actually one of our first, some of the very first curriculum that we launched. But what was really cool was I took a picture in I think all of the seats in our room were full, which was kind of cool because when our ministry, this teen class launched after COVID, we might have had one or two people in the room, students, and four or five volunteers. And I remember going to the leadership thinking, where is everybody? Like, why? There's only two teenagers with a disability in this church. And now it's turned into we need more volunteers. But just as the ministry makeup has changes, so's the volunteers. We've seen a lot more volunteers step up, including people that want to lead. So having this curriculum planned out over the year, you might have somebody that's not necessarily new, or they might be new to teaching, might not be new to the curriculum, but for whatever reason, they just like to have it ahead of time. So you could easily say, hey, look, know that you're interested in teaching. A couple months from now, we've got this series planned. And you could go ahead and give that to them, because like the leader's guide, there's a lot of options in there. Some of them require you to plan ahead if you're going to be really effective. And I like doing that. It makes me feel way more prepared going in, but I think it gives a comfort level to volunteers, whether new or old, to say, hey, in a couple months, here's this coming up, and you can actually rotate through teachers. Or like, I think, doesn't your church do that where you might teach a series and then somebody else? Is that correct?
Yeah, so our church, we have our adult class that has 3 main teachers, and every teacher, will handle a month at a time. So you're on 1 month, you're off 2 months, and then you're on 1 month. So, I'm part of that teaching team. So every 3rd month, I get to teach, and, our ministry leader is a planner, and he likes to plan out in advance, the topics for he actually gave us a list. It was, I think, a 3-year long list of topics that he wanted to cover. Now he's a nice guy, and he says, "You know what? This is what I'd like to see happen." He said, "But I'm open to ideas. If there's something else that you'd like to teach, I'm flexible." Um, so yeah, so it's a great way to do it. Like you said, if you've got a leader that knows they're gonna be teaching in the next 2 or 3 months, you can hand them the curriculum early. Early is always better than late, for especially for those planners, and if you've got activities that you need to prepare for, definitely a great option.
Yeah, because I like a lot of the activities that we got, but obviously, and you've mentioned this time and time again, like the teachers know their class. We don't. As we create this stuff, we can create some ideas, but we don't know the people in your room. And there's been a lot of times where I'm like, oh, this is a great idea, but I'll look ahead and think, okay, here's how I would change this because of the people that are coming. So I can't, like, 3 years in a I can't imagine planning 3 years out. I think our leadership does look at the whole calendar year. In terms of volunteers, however, I think we get it, I think, 2 series ahead, which is comforting. And then everybody knows when they're going to teach. So it just takes the guesswork out of it. But I guess one of the other questions that I had kind of related to the whole calendar year was like, if I'm sitting down and I'm looking at the whole calendar and I'm thinking, okay, the gospel in 3 colors, I'm running this series, this is going great. But wait a minute, what happens if Mother's Day shows up in the middle of this, or Christmas? Do we just stop the gospel in colors and talk about Christmas, or do you recommend just going straight through it? And what do you recommend churches do on some of these special holidays like Mother's Day or Valentine's Day or Christmas?
So I'd say typically most churches kind of blaze through, and, they'll only stop for Christmas or Easter, or maybe the 3rd exception would be Mother's Day. But I think sometimes you're missing something if you don't stop and celebrate. As you're reading through the scriptures, especially the gospels, um, there are several times where Jesus and the disciples stop and go to a celebration. Celebration is an important part of our Christian faith, and I think it's something that we oftentimes um, don't take time for. So that's one of the things that I love. We have a bundle that's a holiday lessons bundle. There's actually 9 lessons in that bundle, believe it or not. So we take and we create a specific lesson for New Year's Day, Independence Day, Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Easter, Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. So 9 different lessons. Um, and actually, the price on this bundle is pretty low based on how much content is included in it. But say a church that maybe you're a church that's been using our curriculum for a while, or maybe you're a church that doesn't use our curriculum at all, but you would like to stop and celebrate some of these holidays. This holiday bundle that we have is perfect. It's over 2 months worth of curriculum. If you're looking at laying out a calendar, you typically have about 50, Sundays that you can fill, and you've got 9 different lessons that you could add here. And you may not want to use them all, but there may be some ones that you want to use. So I think it's a great way to keep things fresh as well. Even if you're working your way through a series, it's okay to take it's not really taking a Sunday off. It's just extending that series an additional week to work in the holiday lesson. But I think it's a wonderful thing to use. Again, keeps your curriculum fresh. It gives you some new things to look at, talk about that maybe you oftentimes kind of blaze through. But celebrating's important. It's an important part of our Christian faith. And I love kind of just the unique ways that these lessons kind of look at things, and they all give you very practical ideas of how to put your faith in action through the holiday seasons. And so I think there's no wrong way necessarily to do it, uh, but I do think it's important to stop and celebrate, and this holiday bundle helps you to do so.
You mentioned the series extension, and that was some feedback that I think we got at a conference, or I don't know, maybe it was an email, or I can't even remember at this point. But I remember somebody saying that one of the things that they loved about the format of the curriculum was that they had some series they were in the middle of, and it spurred some really good conversation. And they said, we're going to stop. We're going to have this conversation. And it was really important to them. So if a series is 4 weeks, you're not locked in to 4 weeks. You could easily look at some of this and say, you know what, we're going to make this 6 weeks. And that's the great thing about it. You can take a 4-week series, I think, and easily make it 6 weeks. I know we've had a lot of good conversations in our class, and I thought, boy, we could really stretch this out for 3 weeks, just this one question. So it's really good to have that kind of flexibility, and then on top of being able to take a holiday bundle and mix that in, and I think it takes a little stress off the whole calendar year. But that leads me to one question, and this is probably tough. Now, I've got an answer. For me, this was a really quick answer. But if you had to pick a favorite series out of everything that we've done, what would be your top pick? And here's the thing, you can only pick one. I'm not going to give you an out and say, oh, you can pick several. You're only allowed to pick one.
If I was going to take the easy out, I would just say it's the last series that we released, because I love them all and I feel like we get better with each series that we release. So I guess that would be my easy out answer, but you're not allowing me to take an easy out. So if I had to pick one, oh my goodness. See, this is tough for me. This is tough for me because as a teacher, uh, which kind of I view myself, I prefer the PowerPoint driven series over the video driven series. But my favorite, if I was forced to pick one, is actually a video driven series, the funniest stories of the Bible series that just released, and a couple reasons why this is probably my favorite series of all time to this point. Um, this series stars an individual with disabilities. His name is Sam, and he is an absolute star. he has Down syndrome. So he's we've had actors before on screen with disabilities, but you wouldn't necessarily know, just by looking or necessarily listening. But with Sam, his disabilities are, they're right there. He's got Down syndrome, and I taught this series at my church recently, and I'll be honest, I've been teaching at my church over 20 years, and we have a group of over 100 adults in our class that I teach, and they responded to this series better than they responded to any other series that we've taught before. And I think that is specifically because Sam was on screen for every lesson, helping to teach that lesson. uh, People were dialing in to him, and I think they were dialing because when they saw him on screen, they identified with him and thought, "He's just like me. He's got disabilities just like me." And it was just such a touching and moving experience. Sure, the lessons were fun. They were based on some of the funniest stories in the Bible, but just the way that they were dialed in to Sam was really moving to be able to see that happen. Another reason why this would be my favorite one to this point is, a lot of times in a series we'll try to theme it out based on something else that people are familiar with. And we themed this series out around kind of the idea of the old movie, To the Future, which happens to be my favorite movie of all time, which I think is like the greatest movie ever. So Sam plays the part of Marty McFly, and he's going back in time to experience and view these funny stories from the Bible. So just that element of it was really fun. So yeah, it's a lot of different reasons. I guess if I had to pick one, it would be the Bible's funniest stories that we picked recently. So how about you, Jason?
Ugh. I almost just cut you off because you referred to Back to the Future as an old movie. And
We are old, my friend.
no, old is like it came out in the 30s I'm not going to concede that Back to the Future is an old movie. So I'm going to let that one slide.
It's gonna have its 40th anniversary next year. Believe that or not, 40th anniversary.
This was supposed to be a happy episode and talking about curriculum, and now I'm depressed. I think it's funny as we've gone along. I feel like, oh, I love this series, and then we'll do a different one. I'm like, oh well, I really like this one. For a long time, it was Tastes Like Chicken, just because that one was so funny. It was over the top. I still to this day have people come up and reference the Happy Shake, which for those that don't know, we actually took a whole Happy Meal and put it in a blender. I say I
Yes, you.
we put it in a blender, but I was the one that drank it. So I think that was one of my favorites. I like the Wrestling with God series. That was the first one where I think we had someone affected by disability on camera, our friend Hayden, and it was wild because we were dressed up as professional wrestlers and we walked around the lobby of the church, and even think had a question from security about what in the world we were doing dressed like that. But that was a really fun one. And the series with Sam, while you were talking, I haven't even shared this with you. I had gotten an email, had been exchanging an email from our friend Emily in Florida, and she's with Trinity New Life. And they had sent us a video of their ministry, a pretty packed house, doing the sign language from the memory verse sign language from that series. And it was really cool just to see that many people doing the memory verse. And so I asked her a little bit more. I was like, well, what's been the response with that series? And she said, the newest series was great. Sam being in the videos is a huge win, and I love that they are able to see someone who looks like them. She also said the closed captioning is super helpful. And she said they took it a step further, and they even added a little stand-up to start the night with one of their volunteers telling cheesy Bible jokes. So they've kind of taken it a step further and done, a little bit above and beyond. But here's an example of somebody that's gotten a curriculum ahead of time, looked at the leader's guide, looked at everything and thought, okay, now how can we modify this for our group and really have a tremendous impact? And she really said that series in particular has had a great impact on their whole group. So that's been pretty cool to see the feedback from that. But I wanted to take just a quick little sidebar, if I could here, and I wanted to know what do you do if, let's say, curriculum's going great, you couldn't ask for anything better, everybody's doing the memory verse, and you're just seeing a lot of positive interaction, and then in the middle of a series, somebody says, "Hey, I want to get baptized." Do you stop the curriculum? Do you address that as a group? Do you have something specific just for this person? Or do you pull them to the side and do you handle that outside of class? What have you done in the past when you come across that?
Yes. All the examples that you said,
Okay, so like more than just yes. How about
you said
I mean,
you
you've already
said
called me
quick sidebar.
you've already called me old. So
No. So
for us old people, we need details.
so here's the deal. We believe here at Ability Ministry, and I think in every ministry, that a decision for Jesus is the ultimate win. It's what everything should be pointing towards. It's what our curriculum points towards. In almost all of our series, it seems like I've got a special call to baptism somewhere, kind of fitted in there. And that's on purpose. It's because we want to lead people to Jesus, right? We want them to make a decision for Jesus. There's nothing more important than that. And if we don't stop and give people opportunities to accept Jesus as their savior, we have failed them as their ministry leaders. So there's nothing greater than leading somebody to Jesus and getting them to the point where they're making a decision to be baptized. So when that happens, there's a lot of different ways to handle it. If you've got a smaller group and the majority of the people in the group are responding to that, maybe they've not been baptized before, and they're like, yeah, this makes sense. Jesus set the example for baptism. I want to follow in the footsteps of Jesus and be baptized myself, because the Bible tells us we should do that. So you can take any of our different baptism styles of curriculum, and I say that styles because we have a video-driven series for baptism. We have baptism decision workbooks that are printed that you can go through. We have a Braille version of that. So there's a lot of different ways you can do that. So maybe your group, the majority of the group, saying, "Hey, we want to do this." So you could stop what you're doing. Again, you can change. You can do the video driven series, or what churches will typically do is they'll have a couple of those printed baptism decision workbooks ready and on hand. And when someone comes forward and says, "Hey, I want to make a decision for Jesus," you say, "Hey, that's awesome. I want to celebrate that with you. It's the best decision that you will ever make. I've got a workbook for you, and I'd love to work through it with you. Or I'd love for you to take it and work through it with someone you trust, someone that's maybe a few steps ahead of you on the faith journey, and ask them to go through that workbook, and then sit down with them and check the workbook, make sure that they're tracking, and getting some of those answers correct, and making sure that they're understanding what they're doing, and then from there, you set up that time to be baptized. Um, I think it's awesome, and you can do it a lot of different ways, but the best thing that I can encourage churches to do is to at least have that digital file that we sell. We sell print copies, and we do sell digital files of the baptism decision workbook. At minimum, buy the digital file and print off copies to have ready in your ministry. Because if you're using our curriculum, um, over time, you're going to run into one of those questions about baptism, because we like to present that question for you to lead people to Jesus. So have that ready. That way you can walk through that with them. Again, you can offer it as a Saturday seminar or Wednesday night, series. You can do it individually with people. So again, any way is the right way as long as you're doing it.
And we're dangerously close to releasing a follow up to that, the beyond baptism. You want to touch on that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, Jason, we've had, oh gosh, it's got to be getting close to maybe 200 different churches that have purchased the baptism decision workbook in any of its formats, whether it be digital, print, or video series. So we know that there have been literally hundreds of people who have made decisions for Jesus to be their savior and been baptized. One of the things that we say in that workbook is that baptism's not the finish line. Baptism's the starting line to your faith journey, the rest of your faith journey. So we recognize that there's got to be something next. People love the workbook, so we created a new workbook called Beyond Baptism. It's in the same style and format as the baptism decision workbook, so it's familiar, and it takes you through some of those important first steps in your faith journey. So we are hopefully, Jason, gonna release that in the next week or 2, and, churches will be able to grab that. So you can have, people that have made a decision for Jesus, that have been baptized, that want to grow in their faith, we can help with that. We have people that haven't made that decision yet that want to be baptized, we can help with that. So we have resources for you and for your group and those people that are making decisions for Jesus. So, yeah, it's exciting. I can't wait for that new resource to roll out.
Just kind of want to wrap this up with this one final question. Well, let's say that I've been using curriculum for a little while now, and I'm like, hey, wait a minute. My group has been asking a lot of questions about this. Do you have a list of things that you're working on, or if not, do you accept suggestions, and how can I get those to you?
Number 1, we're always working on new material. There's never a moment where we don't have a new series, at least a new series in development. But we are always open to suggestions. We recently, have had some suggestions from churches that said, "Hey, we love kind of the topical style of stuff that you guys create, but we would love to have a series or a few series that are more based on kind of walking through a book of the Bible." Good news, we took those suggestions. We have 2 series that are finished and are in the process of being edited before they release. We have the Book of Romans and we have the Book of Job. Next, we'll be working on the Book of Acts. So it's kind of a book study style of curriculum. So we have listened and responded by creating that for you. So yeah, we are always open to suggestions. Also, I just want to share a couple of things that are in development beyond just those 2 series that I mentioned, because we have a ton in development right now. We have an 8 lesson long series on the Beatitudes, which is super exciting. Those will have some funny videos in those. So if you have ever done or used our curriculum that have Oscar and Chiquita or their friends in it, that'll be another series like that. We have a 10 lesson long series that I just finished writing. It's called The Life of Jesus. That'll be the longest series that we have ever created. And the exciting thing about this series is the fact that it's a video driven series, and 100% of the people that will be on video for this series will be people with disabilities. So that I cannot be more excited about that series. We also have a couple other series that we have finished writing. There's a series called "There's No Place Like Heaven." So the theming of that series is we're using kind of the Wizard of Oz feel to that. So there's no place like heaven. Another series that I feel like is a timely series that'll be coming out soon is called "Jesus is Coming Back Soon." I think we all can look around at the world. We see different signs of the times. So this is actually a Bible prophecy series that we have done to help people find hope in troubled times that we are living through. So I'm excited about that as well. So a lot of different things in development, but we are always open to suggestions. If you have something that we've not already created that you'd love to see us create, just send us an email. throw something out on social media, we will get that, and we'll add that at some point in our content development list, which is a very long list.
So this is a ton of helpful information on our curriculum, a little bit of background on it, what it is, some of our favorites, how we recommend to use it, how to plan out for the whole year, and even a little bit of information that Ryan and I are older than we probably want to admit. But if you have any questions after you listen to this, maybe you're still a little confused, I want y'all to remember, if you visit abilityministry.com and in the top right, if you select I want to, on that drop down, there's a button, Get Free Consulting. We'd love to walk with you through this as you reach your disability community for Christ. We do offer free consulting. So if you get stuck, if you're not sure how to plan this, Ryan has obviously created all of this curriculum and can easily help you put together a timeline and a plan on where to get started. So don't feel alone with that. And also, if you've made it this far into the episode, then you're in luck, because the first 20 people to use code August 2024 when checking out will get 25% off any purchase of a curriculum bundle. So maybe budgeting is probably a concern for everybody, especially these days. So a discount code is always a good thing, and the bundles are a great way to load up on several series at once. Coming up on the next episode, we'll talk about ways to get men more involved in your disability ministry. And I think we're actually also going to talk about some women's specific ministry as it relates to that as well. So stay tuned for that. Until next time.
One in 5 people in the world live with a disability, so it shouldn't be difficult to find lots of images to represent this. However, that's not always the case. Disability is Beautiful provides an exhaustive library of art provided by and for the disability community. Our photos reflect the beauty, diversity, and strength of the disability community. Whether you're a business owner, a content creator, or an advocate, Disability is Beautiful has photos for use in blogs, websites, social media, printed materials, business, nonprofit, or personal projects. Visit disabilityisbeautiful.com to create your free account and help us change the face of stock photography.